When Serena Whitlock bought her dream home in Willow Creek Estates, all she wanted was peace and quiet. What she didn't expect was for the HOA president to call 911 on her, or that she'd be the one slapping on the handcuffs by the end of it. Serena Whitlock pulled her SUV into the driveway of her new home, a modest yet elegant two-story brick house nestled beneath sprawling oaks at the end of a cul-de-sac in Willow Creek Estates. The sun was just starting to dip below the horizon, casting warm, amber tones across the pristine lawns and identical mailbox posts of the gated neighborhood. Her German Shepherd rescue, Milo, barked softly from the back seat, his ears perked with curiosity. This was supposed to be a fresh start, a quieter life away from the madness of Dallas, where she had worked years undercover for the police department. She had spent months searching for the right place, hoping for a neighborhood with a sense of peace and community, where she could breathe without constantly looking over her shoulder. Charleston had always been on her radar, and Willow Creek, with its manicured sidewalks and promises of order and serenity, seemed perfect. Or at least it had on paper. She opened the trunk and began unloading boxes onto the porch, taking in the silence. There were no kids riding bikes, no dogs barking, not even a car passing by. It was all too quiet. She shrugged it off. After years of chaos, maybe this was just what peace sounded like. Half an hour later, Serena was on her knees planting marigolds in the front yard, Milo watching nearby, when she heard the sound of slow-rolling tires on gravel. She glanced up. A pristine white Lexus SUV was crawling down the street, its tinted window rolled halfway down. Behind the wheel sat a middle-aged blonde woman in oversized sunglasses, her lips pursed tightly as she scanned Serena's property like a hawk circling prey. The SUV came to a halt directly in front of Serena's driveway. The woman stepped out, clutching a clipboard and wearing an immaculate red cardigan despite the humid summer evening. "You must be the new homeowner," the woman said, her voice cool and sharp. Serena stood, wiping her hands on her jeans. "That's me. I'm Karen DeVille, president of the Willow Creek Homeowners Association," the woman said, as though her name should mean something significant. "We have very clear guidelines in this community, and I noticed a few violations already." Serena raised an eyebrow. "I just moved in today." Karen pointed toward the porch. "The hanging plants you've placed? Those are not compliant with HOA Regulation 6A. Only uniform metal planters are allowed on visible porches. And your dog," she gestured toward Milo, "needs to be registered with the HOA within 48 hours. Serena crossed her arms, keeping her tone even. "Milo's vaccinated and microchipped, and those planters are temporary until I finish unpacking." Karen gave a tight smile. "I'm sure you're not trying to cause trouble, but around here, we take community standards very seriously. It's what keeps our property values high." Serena nodded slowly. "Duly noted." Karen didn't move. She stared for a moment too long, then turned and got back into her car without another word. The SUV pulled away smoothly, but Serena didn't miss the way the woman checked her mirror to get one last look. Later that night, Serena sat on the porch, sipping iced tea. The crickets were out, and the stillness had returned, but her instincts were already prickling. After years of undercover work, she had developed an uncanny ability to read people, and Karen DeVille had the kind of artificial pleasantness Serena knew too well. The kind that came with power, and with the expectation that no one would dare challenge it. Serena had come here to rest, not to fight. But something told her the fight was about to come looking for her anyway. ChatGPT сказал. By the end of the first week, Serena realized Willow Creek Estates was not the peaceful oasis she had envisioned. It was a tightly wound machine governed by a woman obsessed with control. Karen DeVille wasn't just HOA president by title. She ruled the community like a self-appointed queen, and it became clear that she saw Serena not as a neighbor, but as a threat to her perfectly manicured kingdom. The citations began arriving with disturbing speed. A folded piece of paper was taped to Serena's mailbox one morning. HOA infraction, Section 4B. Trash bin visible from street outside designated hours. The bin had been there for 10 minutes, waiting for pickup. 2 days later, another notice appeared. Noise violation, dog barking after 7 p.m. Serena stared at it in disbelief. Milo had barely made a sound since they moved in, and she was home every evening. A few days after that, she received a $50 fine for her welcome mat, which read, "Come back with a warrant." Each citation was more absurd than the last. It wasn't about the rules, it was about intimidation. Serena filed appeals for each violation through the official HOA portal, but they were all swiftly denied with identical language. Upheld by majority board vote. Fine stands. She attended the next HOA meeting out of sheer curiosity. It was held in the community clubhouse, an upscale space with white leather chairs and framed photographs of the neighborhood's early development. Karen presided over the meeting with theatrical confidence, seated in the center of a long mahogany table. Her board members, a tight trio of older residents named Bruce, Janet, and Loretta, flanked her like loyal courtiers. When Serena raised her hand to question the fairness of the recent fines, Karen cut her off with a cold smile. "We welcome concerns," she said smoothly, "but this is not an open forum." The rest of the meeting focused on topics like lawn edging standards, mailbox repainting, and compliance audits. Serena took notes in silence, but she was boiling inside. Every second confirmed what she already suspected. This HOA wasn't about community. It was about control and profit. The real blow came on the 12th day. Serena returned from the grocery store to find a police cruiser idling in her driveway. 2 uniformed officers were standing near the porch, speaking with Karen, who wore an expression of practiced distress. "She's living there illegally," Karen told them, loud enough for the neighbors who had gathered across the street to hear. "We don't have proper documentation on her HOA approval, and she's been aggressive with me in multiple encounters." One of the officers turned to Serena as she stepped out of her vehicle. "Ma'am, we received a 911 call about a trespassing complaint. We need to see your identification and some proof of residence." Serena didn't flinch. She reached calmly into her jacket, pulled out her wallet, and flipped it open to reveal a shining Charleston Police Department badge. "You're talking to Detective Serena Whitlock," she said evenly, "and this is my legally purchased home, paid in full. Would you like to see the deed?" The officer blinked, awkwardness rushing into his posture. No, Detective. That won't be necessary." Karen's face drained of color. Her mouth opened, then closed again. Serena walked slowly toward her. "You filed a false police report. That's a felony, Karen." Karen sputtered, her composure cracking. I thought you were squatting. There was no record of HOA payment." "I paid it during closing," Serena interrupted, "and I have receipts. Your records are either out of date or being manipulated. Either way, calling 911 on a homeowner to try and humiliate them is abuse of emergency services. And trust me, I've put people in jail for less." For a long moment, no one spoke. Then the officer turned to Karen and said, "Ma'am, I suggest you leave the property now." As Karen stalked away, Serena noticed more neighbors had come outside, silently watching. Some looked surprised, others embarrassed. A few seemed quietly amused, but no one said a word. Serena exhaled slowly and stepped into her house. Milo greeted her at the door, tail wagging gently. She closed the door behind her and leaned against it. She'd hoped for rest. Instead, she had just stepped into a neighborhood war. And this time, she wasn't undercover. She was very much out in the open. Serena spent the next several nights compiling evidence. Every notice, every photo, every email from the HOA. She cataloged them meticulously, arranging them in folders labeled by type and date. She had dealt with corruption before, in back alleys and corporate boardrooms. This was no different. Power could wear pearls and speak in passive-aggressive language. But it was still power, and when abused, it left a trail. Karen, to no one's surprise, didn't back off after the 911 stunt. She only got more creative. 2 days after the police incident, Serena received a certified letter citing her for unauthorized modifications to the front porch. The supposed violation? A single wind chime she had hung from the corner. The next day, her mailbox was flagged as unpainted, despite it being freshly painted during escrow. Then came a notice accusing her of leaving a dog bowl unattended on the lawn, which was laughable. Milo had never eaten outside. The fines now totaled over $600. The language in the latest letter included veiled threats about potential liens and legal action for non-compliance. Serena knew exactly what Karen was doing, using the HOA system as a weapon, drowning her in paperwork and pressure, hoping she'd snap or move out. It was psychological warfare through bureaucracy, but Serena didn't snap. Instead, she went deeper. At the next HOA board meeting, she came early and sat in the back with her phone recording on silent. She observed. Karen led the meeting with her usual performative charm, but Serena noticed subtle shifts in tone when contracts were discussed, especially one involving the neighborhood landscaping company. The board voted unanimously to approve a $42,000 yearly renewal with Green Glory Landscaping. Serena wrote down the name. Something about it felt off. After the meeting, she did some digging. Green Glory was registered under a shell company in another state. A few clicks later, Serena discovered the name of the LLC's founder, Garrett Holmes, Karen DeVille's brother-in-law. She dug deeper. The company had no physical office, no staff photos, no verifiable projects outside of Willow Creek. It was a funnel. Karen was inflating contract bids and pushing the money into her family's pockets. The more she pulled, the more the rot surfaced. Serena discovered that the HOA dues were being used for a slew of suspicious expenditures: administrative fees, compliance bonuses, and executive reimbursements. Several of the charges had been approved without resident votes. She wasn't just dealing with a petty tyrant. Karen was running a full-blown racket, cloaked in bylaws and flower beds. But Serena needed more. She needed a victim willing to speak. That's when she met Elena Vega. Elena lived in Lot 12C, a modest townhome on the edge of the community. She was in her early 30s, working 2 jobs to support her 6-year-old son, Mateo. Serena had seen her once or twice in passing, but hadn't spoken much. That changed one evening when Serena caught Elena standing in front of her HOA letterbox, visibly trembling, holding a bright yellow citation in her hand. "They're trying to evict me," Elena said quietly when Serena asked if she was okay. "I missed one payment last year. Karen keeps raising the fines every month. She said if I don't settle it soon, I'll lose the house." Serena invited her inside for tea. Over the next hour, the story unfolded. According to Elena, Karen had come to her door one weekend and offered her a deal. If Elena agreed to clean Karen's house every Saturday for 6 months, without pay, she would have her dues forgiven. When Elena hesitated, Karen reminded her that her type of situation wasn't very welcome in Willow Creek anyway. Serena's hands clenched as she listened. "Did you record it?" Elena hesitated. "Actually, yes. I didn't know if it was legal, but I was scared." She pulled out her phone and played the audio. Karen's voice was unmistakable. "I could file for lien tomorrow, Elena, or we could do this the friendly way. My floors need polishing. You get to stay. Seems fair, doesn't it?" Serena's chest burned. This was it, the thread that could unravel the entire operation. She leaned forward, voice steady. "Elena, I believe you. And I'm going to take this to people who can do something about it." Elena looked terrified. "Will she retaliate?" "She'll try," Serena said. "But she doesn't know who she's really dealing with." That night, Serena called an old friend from her FBI task force days. "You up for a little HOA corruption?" she asked into the phone. Nash Carter's voice came through the line without hesitation. "Send me everything. Let's burn this thing down." Serena spent the following week coordinating quietly with Nash Carter, her former FBI colleague who now specialized in municipal corruption cases. They had taken down far worse in the past: shady city councilmen, dirty cops, even a mayor once. But this was something different. It was smaller, tighter, more insidious. This wasn't about millions or politics. It was about everyday people being bullied, extorted, and silenced within their own homes. Nash reviewed the audio file from Elena and immediately confirmed it was enough for probable cause, especially when paired with Serena's documentation. But to go further, into RICO territory, they needed more. They needed a pattern, a web of connections between Karen's personal financial gain and her misuse of HOA power. And most of all, they needed victims willing to testify. Serena began quietly knocking on doors. Some neighbors were hesitant. Others were scared. A few dismissed her, too afraid of retaliation. But then she knocked on the door of Lot 19B and met Madison Holloway, a young woman caring for her terminally ill uncle, a retired Army veteran named John Holloway. Her face hardened the moment Serena introduced herself. "She went after us, too," Madison said. "Tried to place a lien on my uncle's house for $120 in unpaid fees while he was in hospice. I tried to explain, to get an extension, but Karen didn't care. Then, get this, we woke up one morning and the American flags we'd hung outside for his service record were gone. She claimed they violated aesthetic code." Serena's pulse spiked. "Did you report it?" "We didn't think anyone would care," Madison admitted. "But I have a Ring camera. It caught her taking them down herself at 4:12 in the morning, wearing gloves." That was the kind of evidence Serena needed. Within hours, Madison sent over the footage. Clear, time-stamped video of Karen DeVille trespassing on private property and removing decorations she later cited as violations. It was damning. Nash was impressed. "She's not even trying to hide it. That's the arrogance talking. She thinks she's untouchable because it's all buried under procedures and bylaws." Serena dug deeper into the HOA's finances. She filed public records requests, scanned through years of meeting minutes, and traced payments made to vendors. Green Glory Landscaping, the shell company run by Karen's brother-in-law, had received over $160,000 in maintenance contracts in just 2 years. Not a single competitive bid had been offered. The same went for security patrols, which had been awarded to a consulting firm, registered under a P.O. box address in Michigan, later traced to Karen's college roommate. The pattern was undeniable. What sealed it all came from an unlikely place, Janet, one of Karen's own board members. Serena found her alone in the community garden one morning, sitting on a bench, staring out at the pond. Her hands trembled slightly as she smoked a thin cigarette. "Don't bother trying to convince me," Janet said before Serena even spoke. "I know it's all rotten." "Then why go along with it?" Serena asked gently. "Because she makes you think she'll ruin your life if you don't," Janet said bitterly. "She's threatened my son's job, told Bruce he'd be audited, warned Loretta she'd reveal things about her late husband. It's all fear." Serena sat beside her. "I'm not afraid of her, but I need someone from inside to talk. Just once. On the record." Janet looked at her. Really looked, as if weighing the cost. Then she took a deep breath and pulled a folded paper from her purse. "This is a copy of the most recent payment authorization. She forced us to sign it without review. It's a $25,000 disbursement to a company that doesn't even exist." Serena opened the document. It was exactly what she needed, proof of financial fraud. By nightfall, Nash had secured a warrant under the Federal Racketeer Influenced and Corrupt Organizations Act. Karen DeVille and her inner circle were officially under criminal investigation. But Serena wasn't done yet. She wanted Karen to face justice not in silence, not behind a closed door, but in front of the very community she had manipulated and ruled over for years. And that opportunity was coming. The HOA's quarterly meeting was just 3 days away, and Serena intended to bring the house down. The evening of the quarterly HOA meeting arrived, and the clubhouse was buzzing with more energy than usual. Word had spread, something was happening. Neighbors who rarely attended had shown up in numbers, whispering in hushed tones and glancing toward the front row where Karen DeVille sat, poised in her crimson blazer like a monarch on a throne. Her board members, Bruce and Loretta, flanked her on either side, though their expressions were more strained than usual. Janet was notably absent. Serena entered through the back, her presence quiet but electric. She wore a dark blue blazer over jeans, her Charleston PD badge tucked discreetly in her coat pocket. Nash stood beside her, dressed in plain clothes, his eyes scanning the room. Two federal agents waited outside in an unmarked car with arrest papers, and everything needed to take Karen into custody the moment the signal was given. Karen took the podium, tapping the mic as if it were a royal scepter. "Good evening, Willow Creek family," she began. "I want to thank you all for attending. Tonight's agenda includes our annual landscaping renewal, a discussion on paint color updates, and a vote on the upcoming holiday decor restrictions." Serena folded her arms and leaned back in her chair. She waited. Karen continued with her usual flourish, her voice steady, her tone dripping with faux warmth. "We have maintained one of the highest-rated HOA communities in the county. Compliance is the heart of our excellence. And while some individuals have recently questioned our practices, I want to assure you—" "I'd like to speak," Serena said, rising to her feet. Karen blinked, caught mid-sentence. "Ms. Whitlock, this is not an open mic session. We'll save comments for the end." Serena held up a manila folder. "Actually, this isn't a comment, it's evidence." A rustle of murmurs swept the room. Karen's eyes darted to Bruce, who suddenly looked pale. Serena stepped to the front, standing just beside the podium. "I'm Detective Serena Whitlock, Charleston PD, and I've spent the last month investigating your HOA leadership." Gasps erupted from the crowd. "Let me be clear," Serena continued, raising her voice just enough to carry. "This board has used its authority not to protect this community, but to intimidate, extort, and profit off of it." Karen's face remained frozen in a smile, but her hand gripped the podium tightly. "In the past year alone," Serena went on, "over $160,000 in dues were funneled to companies owned by Karen DeVille's relatives and personal contacts. No bids, no transparency, and no approval from the homeowners." She opened the folder and held up a payment authorization form with Karen's signature. "This document right here, signed by board members under duress, approved a $25,000 payment to a company that doesn't exist." A woman in the crowd gasped. A man stood up and shouted, "Is that where our playground repairs went?" "That's just the beginning," Serena said, her voice unwavering. "She has coerced vulnerable residents like Elena Vega into unpaid labor under threat of eviction. She's harassed families, falsified violations, and even removed property from a veteran's home to justify fines." Karen interrupted, her voice cracking beneath the pressure. "This is slander. You have no—" "I have video evidence," Serena snapped, "of you trespassing, of you threatening residents, and of you offering to make violations disappear in exchange for personal favors. I also have audio recordings and financial statements, all of which have been turned over to the FBI." The room went silent. Serena stepped back. "And now I'm here to do what no one else in this neighborhood has had the power to do." She reached into her coat, pulled out her badge, and held it up high. "Karen DeVille, you are under arrest for fraud, extortion, falsifying legal documents, and misuse of public funds under the RICO Act. You have the right to remain silent." Two federal agents entered through the back doors. Karen stepped away from the podium, shaking, backing toward Bruce, who took a sudden step away from her like she was radioactive. "No, no, you can't. This is a mistake," Karen shrieked. "This is my community." One agent gently but firmly pulled her hands behind her back as the other read her rights aloud. The room erupted, not in chaos but in applause. Neighbors stood up, clapping, cheering. Some cried, others hugged. It was as if a spell had finally been broken. As Karen was led out in handcuffs, Serena turned to face the crowd. "This is your neighborhood," she said. "It's time to take it back." In the days following Karen's arrest, Willow Creek Estates felt like a completely different neighborhood. The invisible weight that had hung over the community, built from years of intimidation, fines, and whispered warnings, had finally lifted. People who once avoided eye contact at the mailbox now stopped to talk. Kids rode bikes freely again. Neighbors greeted each other with something that hadn't been seen in a long time: trust. Karen's dramatic takedown made headlines in local media, especially when the RICO charges were announced. The story was too ironic to ignore. An HOA president arrested by a neighbor she tried to evict with a false 911 call. The headline in the Charleston Chronicle read, "Detective cracks corrupt HOA from inside. Community celebrates." While Karen awaited trial, Serena and Nash worked with the FBI and city officials to review the HOA's structure. The remaining board members were called in for questioning. Bruce cracked under pressure and admitted that he had known about the fraud, but was too scared to resist. Loretta lawyered up and attempted to claim ignorance, but bank records linked her to questionable reimbursements from the HOA budget. Janet, however, gave a full confession and agreed to testify in exchange for immunity. Her testimony helped expose years of financial abuse and backdoor deals. The state appointed a temporary overseer to manage the HOA while residents prepared for new elections. For the first time in its history, Willow Creek Estates would be governed by people who lived there, not those who lorded over it. A special town hall was held in the community square. Rows of folding chairs filled with residents who now felt empowered to speak. Serena sat in the front row beside Elena and Madison, both of whom had played a vital role in exposing the truth. A young official from the city stood on stage with a microphone. "We're opening nominations for a new HOA board. Anyone from the community may run. No prior board experience required. Just honesty and a desire to serve your neighbors." Several hands went up. To Serena's surprise, Elena stood and walked nervously toward the stage. "My name is Elena Vega," she said, her voice trembling. "Some of you know me. Some probably only know the notices that used to be taped to my door. I've lived here for 5 years. I work hard, I raise my son, and I want this to be a place where people feel safe. That's all I want. So, I'd like to run for HOA secretary." The crowd applauded. Serena beamed. Next, Madison stepped forward. "I'm running for treasurer," she said. "No one should ever have to dig through their uncle's medical bills to fight a fraudulent lien." By the end of the night, over a dozen residents had volunteered for positions. But the final surprise came when a man stood up from the back. Gray-haired, quiet, wearing a workman's jacket and carrying a cane. It was Mr. Holloway himself. He shuffled to the microphone, steadying himself. "I'm not running for anything," he said, "but I want to thank the woman who stood up when no one else would." He turned toward Serena. "You didn't just stop her. You reminded us that we still have a voice. You gave us back our dignity." The entire crowd stood erupting in applause. Serena felt her chest tighten with emotion. She hadn't come to Willow Creek to lead. She had come to escape. But life, it seemed, had other plans. Later that night, as the stars scattered across the Charleston sky, Serena walked Milo down the same quiet street where she had first met Karen. Hanging plants swayed from porches that once dared not be decorated. Kids' chalk drawings still adorned the sidewalk, smiling suns, hopscotch lines, a big heart that read, "Hope lives here." She paused at Elena's home. Little Mateo was sitting on the porch steps, holding a tiny flashlight and reading a picture book. When he saw her, he waved. "Hi, Miss Serena. Mommy said you're a real hero." Serena smiled softly. "Not a hero, just someone who got tired of being quiet." But even as she said it, she knew. Something bigger had changed here. Not just the board, not just the bylaws. The neighborhood had woken up. And this time, it wasn't going back to sleep. Karen DeVille's trial was scheduled for the end of spring, but the weeks leading up to it were already making waves across the city. Prosecutors built their case with help from Serena, Nash, and the many residents who finally came forward. Victims of false violations, unlawful liens, and threats testified one by one, some trembling, others angry, but all determined to be heard. The courthouse was packed on the first day of the trial. Reporters clustered outside, microphones ready. Inside, Karen appeared composed, dressed in gray with her trademark pearls, but there was no hiding the stiffness in her posture or the shadow of fear behind her eyes. She pled not guilty to all charges: fraud, extortion, tampering with evidence, abuse of power, and more. But the evidence was overwhelming. Elena took the stand first. Her voice was soft but unwavering as she played the recording of Karen offering to erase her debt in exchange for unpaid labor. Gasps echoed through the courtroom. Karen shifted uncomfortably in her chair. Next was Madison, who presented the surveillance footage of Karen trespassing and stealing the flags from her dying uncle's home. Then came Janet, once a loyal board member, now a whistleblower, walking the jury through years of forged invoices and coerced votes. Every testimony added another crack in Karen's defense. Serena testified near the end. Dressed in her formal badge and blazer, she spoke calmly, laying out the investigation step by step. She recounted Karen's manipulation of HOA bylaws, the forged payments, the shell companies, the threats. She didn't need to dramatize. Truth, in this case, was heavier than fiction. But what struck the courtroom most wasn't just the evidence. It was Serena's closing words. "This case isn't about a few rules or bad paperwork," she said, facing the jury. "It's about a woman who believed her power was greater than the people around her. She used fear like a leash and turned a community into her playground. But justice doesn't live in boardrooms or behind fences. It lives where people refuse to be silenced." The courtroom sat in stunned silence. The judge nodded slowly and recessed for the day. Karen's attorney tried to delay the inevitable with technicalities and distractions, but the verdict came swiftly. Guilty on all counts. The sentence, 5 years in state prison with no possibility of early parole. The judge called her actions a deliberate and prolonged abuse of civic trust. Karen didn't speak as the cuffs were placed on her. She didn't look at the crowd or the jury. Her eyes found Serena for the briefest second, filled with a strange mixture of resentment and reluctant respect. Then she was led away. Back in Willow Creek, the verdict was received like the end of a long, stormy season. Neighbors gathered that evening in the community garden Serena had once seen empty and cold. This time there were lights strung along the fences, tables filled with homemade dishes and laughter that no longer felt rehearsed. Children played tag between the trees. Parents shared stories of how they had almost moved away, of how they had felt powerless. But now, something deeper was growing among them than just trees and trimmed lawns. A sense of ownership, a sense of home. That night, Elena knocked on Serena's door holding a folded piece of paper. Milo barked softly, tail wagging. "What's this?" Serena asked. Elena handed it over. "It's official. You've been nominated to run for HOA president." Serena laughed. "I don't even want the job." "But we want you," Elena said with a smile. "We don't need someone perfect, just someone we trust." Serena looked down at the paper, then back out at the street, where porch lights glowed warmly, and wind chimes she wasn't allowed to hang months ago now sang freely in the breeze. For the first time since moving in, it truly felt like home. She folded the paper, tucked it under her arm, and smiled. Let's rebuild it right. Summer arrived gently in Willow Creek Estates, and with it came a sense of rebirth. The scars of the past were still visible. Faded warning stickers still clung to a few mailbox posts, and the remnants of Karen's legacy could be seen in the peeling HOA violation, notices some residents had kept pinned to their fridge as a badge of survival. But the atmosphere had changed completely. Where once there had been fear, now there was color. Families planted flowers that weren't on the HOA's approved list. Children chalked the sidewalks with wild joy. Porch swings, once banned, creaked lazily in the breeze. The newly elected HOA board was a mix of familiar and new faces. Elena Vega, now secretary, had installed a bilingual suggestion box outside the clubhouse. Madison served as treasurer, auditing every budget line with a fierce sense of justice. A retired teacher named Mr. Blanchard took over landscaping decisions, and he personally visited each home to ask what people actually wanted planted on their lawns. And Serena? She was now HOA president. Reluctantly at first. but the community's vote had been nearly unanimous. And after everything they had been through together, she couldn't walk away. She saw it not as power, but as protection, using the same tools that had once been weaponized to now rebuild something kind and human. Her first order of business had been simple: erase all outstanding fines. She also revoked punitive bylaws, made meetings open to every resident with equal voice, and introduced a motion that no future board could serve more than 2 consecutive terms. Transparency replaced secrecy. And the minutes from each meeting were posted online and mailed to those who preferred paper. But Serena's favorite part came one weekend in July, the first ever Willow Creek Block Party. For the first time in years, the community square was alive with music and laughter. Food trucks lined the entrance road. Kids raced down the grass hill in cardboard boxes. Teens played pickup basketball under string lights. A local band played covers from the 70s, and the smell of barbecue drifted through the air like something sacred. Serena walked through the crowd with Milo trotting beside her, his blue bandana tied neatly around his neck. Everywhere she went, people smiled. A woman handed her lemonade. A young couple showed her a baby girl, born just weeks ago, and joked they were naming her Hope. Children tugged on her hand and asked if she was really the detective who arrested the HOA villain. At one point, a girl of about 7 stood quietly beside her and held out a drawing. It showed Serena, badge shining, standing beside a house with a giant heart above it. "This is for you," the girl said, "because you made the bad lady go away and made the neighborhood nice again." Serena knelt down, overwhelmed. "Thank you. This means more than you know." As the sun began to set, she found herself standing on the community clubhouse steps, looking over the square. Nash appeared beside her with 2 sodas in hand. "I have to admit," he said, "I thought this place was beyond saving." "So did I," Serena said softly. He nudged her shoulder. "You ever think you were meant to come here? Not to hide, but to lead?" Serena looked at him, then at the scene before her. "I think I came to rest, but instead, I got to heal." He raised his soda to her. "To healing." She clinked her can against his. Later that night, after the party died down and the stars came out, Serena sat on her porch in silence. Milo curled at her feet. Fireflies blinked lazily in the warm air. Her wind chimes whispered gently in the breeze. No longer a violation. Just part of the home she had fought to protect. And in that moment, Serena knew, Willow Creek wasn't just a place she lived. It was the place she helped free. And now it belonged to all of them. In my view, the ending of this story is not just satisfying, it's powerful in a deeply human way. Serena didn't just take down a corrupt HOA president, she transformed an entire community by proving that silence enables abuse. But truth, no matter how quietly spoken, can shake walls. What I love most about the conclusion is that justice wasn't served through vengeance, but through integrity and courage. Serena could have chosen revenge or walked away after exposing Karen, but instead, she stayed. She helped rebuild something better, not perfect, but honest. That's rare. The image of neighbors laughing together, children playing freely, and rules finally serving the people rather than controlling them, reminds us how easy it is for systems to become toxic when left unchecked, but also how resilient people can be when given the chance to rise. And Serena's growth, from someone who came to hide to someone who chose to lead, makes the story not just about external victory, but personal healing. The heart of this story isn't about HOA drama. It's about community, accountability, and the quiet, revolutionary power of doing the right thing even when no one's watching. In the end, Willow Creek wasn't saved by a hero in a cape. It was saved by a neighbor with a badge and a backbone, and that makes all the difference.